All right, welcome everybody to the final edition, the pre-week 17, the pre um, fantasy championship weekend Monday Night Hammer. As always, I'm joined by Michael Sicoli. You can find him on Twitter at Michael__Sicoli. I'm Nick. You can find me on Twitter at
Championship
run underscore
weekend,
the
Monday Night Hammer.
underscore Sims. We're presented today, the Monday Night Hammer by For Fantasy Sake QC, sponsored by Mobile Party Experience. And yeah, it's the final show of the year. It's been a blast. Hopefully you had a good Christmas. How was your Christmas, Mike?
It was good. It was good. It was interrupted by the startling Mike Williams news of him getting thrown on the COVID list. I was eating dinner, happily looking at my family, very thankful for everyone around me, full on Thanksgiving style, and my head just hit the table when Mike Williams was announced that he had COVID and will miss this weekend and next weekend. So my dad turned and looked at me and was like, "Is this real news or is it football news?" And I was like, "It's football news." And he just went on talking with everyone else. And
Yeah, that happens at the
that was my
Christmas gathering. Yeah, pretty good Christmas myself. Still we still had to be eye on the prize for the fantasy lineups, especially if you're in some playoff matchups. Unfortunately, I got caught asleep at the wheel. But the Mike Williams and DeAndre Swift news came at times where I wasn't as plugged in as I normally am. And then I was really rushing to do some DFS stuff, just because I'm trying to like fine tune a little bit on that side of things. And I actually did get to go to the Eagles game, but unfortunately, I left Mike Williams and DeAndre Swift in a couple playoff spots, and it definitely lost me one matchup because I had Byron Pringle ready to go. And in another matchup, I need a 20-point game out of Jalen Waddle in order to overcome the zero that I took from starting Mike Williams. And then in the third, I scored 225 points and absolutely dominated. So that's just the way it goes sometimes. And you need how many points from Jalen Waddle?
I had an interesting weekend. So I swept my redraft real easy. So I'll be in the championship for that one. With my college dynasty, it came down to last night, Tony Pollard. I don't know. Did you catch the game, Nick?
I did not watch it.
You did not. Okay, so I'll quickly set the scene for you. Tony Pollard. That game was a rout early. All right, everyone knew it was a rout. I knew as soon as like the second quarter hit that all the points I needed, they had to come early in that game. So Tony Pollard got a drive. He was about alternating full drives with Zeke. So it comes down. He's inside the 5. He gets the carry. He's running in. There's an offensive line scrum and a push, and he pushes them all the way to that half-yard line. Next play action, touchdown to some offensive lineman. Long and short of it, if Tony Pollard scored that touchdown, I'm in the finals right now. I would have completed a 5% projection.
Oh yeah, it's always good when you can overcome
T. Higgins carried me, and Montgomery carried me back into that game. Tony Pollard couldn't punch it home, but besides that, my most important dynasty to me, my home league dynasty, where I'm trying to go to the finals for the third year in a row, comes down to if Jalen Waddle drops less than 21. So I can allow 20. I can allow.
We can middle. I think I need 19 out of them. So there's a middle there. There's a middle. So your rant, you'll have to maybe adjust so that he gets exactly 19 points because I know you're going to bring him up during that rant.
I do think he's a good game, but it's fine. I got this is my lucky fantasy playoff shirt.
Okay, great. I don't have one. Maybe that's why I'm so garbage in the playoffs. I always.
It is tiny. It is ripped up. I'm trying not to show the rips. And it's not due to big muscles or anything. It's just a small and old shirt. But I'm hoping this one takes me in tonight. I really need this one.
All right. Yeah, and you mentioned T. Higgins. We're gonna talk about him a little bit because my lord, what a performance he put on. But yeah, so let's jump in here. Really rough one right off the bat. James Robinson has an Achilles injury. It's a shame, man. It's just there's an argument where like undrafted free agents, this is why they fail, right? Philip Lindsay is an example. He had like a brief flash in the pan. James Robinson has strung together 2 solid seasons, but when you're an undrafted free agent, you get a new coaching regime in there. You get people that think they know better. Like it's just tough to have the coaching staff stay with you, right? On top of you have that variance, and on top of injury variance, where Achilles injuries are tough, and James Robinson's had a couple really good years, and he's gone down. And Urban Meyer kind of really ruined this year from being an even bigger year, and it's just a shame. But James Robinson went out, let a lot of people down in the fantasy lineups, but hopefully he gets back next year and has a coaching staff that appreciates him. How about that, Mike?
It's tough because, like you said, you set the whole scene for it. This is as bad as it can get for James Robinson. It's the worst case situation to me, where the Achilles injury is a notoriously tough one to come back from. We're going to touch on Cam Akers in a little bit, who's somehow throwing that narrative out the way.
What a beast.
That would be an outlier if Cam Akers even overcomes that. We still don't know. It would be early to say that. But for James Robinson, he's not going to be ready by week 1. Odds are, historically saying, it would be very unlikely that James Robinson is out there fully ready, suited up for week 1. And what that sets up perfectly is for Travis Etienne, the forgotten man, the first-round pick, to come in and step in and establish himself with an inevitable new coaching staff. So this is Travis Etienne's backfield to lose, quite honestly. They'll probably bring in somebody just because they don't want to trust 2 guys coming off injuries. So maybe that new guy sees some work as a backup, but it sets up perfectly for Travis Etienne and sets up horrifically for James Robinson, who really deserves a lot better than what just happened in a totally meaningless game against the Jets.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, best case scenario is that he gets traded, which I don't see that happening. They'll probably go like a thunder and lightning type of thing. I mean, that's actually a pretty, I mean, if the Jazz can just get a little bit better, have a little bit more stability, it'll be interesting to see if they roll with Darrell Bevell as their head coach, who I think he's respected enough that he might get a shot, but
I doubt it.
They'll probably bring someone else in. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with James Robinson for sure. Let's see here. Where are we at with I lost the doc. Yeah. Last show here, and I'm really showing out.
We got Miles Sanders, another running back who broke his hand this weekend. I quite literally just saw a tweet on this, and I think it might have been, I don't remember who said it, but we got 3 years of Miles Sanders' career, and we still don't know what Miles Sanders could be. Because these a broken hand, a sprained ankle, a high ankle sprain, it just adds up. Knee sprains, just nothing that's going to knock him out for a year, but something that knocks him out. He comes back, he's not 100%, and then he gets nicked up and hurt again. Jordan Howard also suffered a stinger in this game. That's not expected to be serious. He'll probably be suited up this weekend, but this should be the end of the season for Miles Sanders. Maybe a playoff run. Broken hands, typically that 3 to 5 weeks at least. It's a running back, so it's a little bit different, but it's tough for Miles Sanders. Where are you at with Miles Sanders right now?
Kind of where I was with Will Fuller, kind of where you should have been with Keenan Allen. But listen, this is the thing. Like, after this year of Will Fuller and like really not showing a whole lot of motivation to come off the IR, it seemed content to just sit back and not play this year. Before this year, we got a top 10 year out of Will Fuller, maybe because he was on steroids, but someone's injury prone. The point I'm trying to make here is someone is injury prone before he's not. Yep. The Will Fuller before Will Fuller was Keenan Allen. I don't think a lot of people remember that Keenan Allen's first 3 to 4 years in the league just really injury ridden. But we're not talking about like right now what's happening to Julio, where like his hamstring goes every time he steps on the field. That's chronic. That makes sense because he's older. The stuff that was happening to Keenan Allen and even Will Fuller is
lacerated
kidney, like freak tendon tears, right? Which that's variance. That's bad luck, right? What's happening to Will Fuller seems to be a little bit more causal instead of like bad luck. It seems like his form. It seems like the speed at which he plays in the NFL, and that's just his body's not able to hold up to that extreme. So that's one thing. But what I'm saying is Miles Sanders is kind of in that category. Very weird injuries that if we get a healthy year out of him, he could come out of nowhere next year. Like I'm probably going to be back in on Miles Sanders next year. I think that the backfield situation probably can't get worse for him. It's probably going to be crowded again, but if he's healthy, I feel like he's going to get 18 to 21 touches a game, which I'm all in for.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny Gainwell's the only name I think we could say for sure is returning. I think I think Jordan Howard could come back. I think he's been helpful in a few spots. He's familiar with the city.
Yeah,
He's been solid for them. But I mean, it's Jordan Howard.
I
don't expect them to add a huge.
Yeah, Kenny Gainwell could, I guess, take a step forward, but he doesn't really have the draft capital where you would expect him to. His draft capital of a day 2 pick or day 3 pick. He was a 5th rounder, wasn't he?
He slipped to day 3.
Yeah, so a day 3 pick is being brought in as like, okay, if the starter goes down, we put him in as like the second back in the committee. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like the way it splits out for them, is that when Miles Sanders out, Jordan Howard is the early down guy, Boston Scott mixes in, and then Kenny Gainwell gets a shot every once in a while. So that's just kind of a day 3 draft capital guy who hasn't proven himself yet.
Yep.
Maybe he learns how to pass block, earns a bit more of a role next year. I don't know. But again, if Miles Sanders is going in the 6th, 7th, Miles Sanders might drift back to like the 6th, 7th, which if I'm going 0 RB, like we might be all in on Miles Sanders next year.
I think we're starting to learn that, and we'll touch on it later with what we're learning. But these mid-round running backs is where you're going to make your money. It's tough to feel confident when you're drafting them, but that's where the hit rate, that's where the championship caliber players are. But to quickly touch on Week 17 purposes, Miles Sanders out, Jordan Howard's a little bit dealing with that stinger, might play through it. You know, they tend to. But Boston Scott, are you playing Boston Scott this week?
I'll definitely rate him up as someone because it's likely he's on the waiver wire.
He should be.
I think you can play him for sure. Yeah. He was getting goal line looks. Like,
yeah.
Who do they play?
Boston Scott goes against Washington. Washington's been run over all season. That we saw last night. They got run over again, and in addition to that, we saw them fighting each other on the sidelines.
And I think what the Eagles want to do in a neutral situation is they want to run the ball right now. They've kind of fell into a little bit of an offense where Lamar Jackson's early years, where they certainly don't have the talent to do it like they do it, and Jalen Hurts is not the quarterback that Lamar Jackson is, but I think they're piecing together like a light version of that. If that is if the Ravens were whole milk, this is the Eagles are the skim milk version of early career Ravens, which is so insulting. I just insulted the very city in which I live. I'm sorry. But anyway, Darrell Henderson, he is also banged up. Actually went on IR. And interestingly enough, we can get right into it. Cam Akers expected to maybe play this week after tearing his Achilles. What was that? Was that the first week of training camp?
It was early July.
So to give you a bit of perspective on that, it's 1 week. The track record, really, Donta Foreman this year is really like the first example that we've seen of someone be able to come back from an Achilles tear. And this has been a couple years in the making for Donta Foreman. And I mean, he has a role on the Titans and he's solid. He has burst. I think that the story on him is he's not very talented, but he's reaching at least 95% of what he was before the tear. Cam Akers is coming back way sooner. I think the jury's still out on, are we going to see Cam Akers at 95% of what he was before the tear?
I think it's tough to use Foreman. Foreman's the only person we could really look to.
That's why I use him.
He's a healthy scratch, but even Foreman, he tore his Achilles 2 years ago. He's had 2 years to recover from that. Cam Akers has 6 months. I am shocked and honestly a little bit concerned that he's back this soon, especially like in terms of, I think it was reported initially that maybe you see him back in the playoffs, and we all went, sure we will. But playoffs, that there's some reason for that. It makes sense. Regular season, I don't see any reason to risk Cam Akers. You're certainly not playing him in fantasy. You're certainly locking in Sony Michel in your lineups. I think are we in agreement there?
If you're facing a juggernaut and you have Cam Akers somehow,
I'm not playing Cam Akers, man. You couldn't pay me to play Cam Akers right now.
I mean, if I'm like going into the matchup 5% like dog, you know what I mean? Like I only won this week because of like COVID or something, I might play him just for the variance. He looked good, man. He looked good.
Listen, the Achilles too and the hot hand that Sony Michel's riding right now. I think Sean McVay is very happy with Sony Michel. Remember, they traded for Sony Michel. They gave up an asset, which the Rams love to do, but they
Sony
gave
Michel
up an
is
asset
balling.
to
You're
get
right. Yeah,
he's
we're
having
not
a
playing
good, he's
Cam. We're
having a
not
good
playing
run of it.
Cam Akers. We're not playing Cam
We're not
Akers.
playing
Fine. Jimmy Garoppolo is, I mean, really not looking good to start this week. So if you were 100% in, he's already rolled out.
I don't know if he's officially ruled out, but he's ruled out in the sense that Kyle Shanahan's come out and said Trey Lance has had his best month of practice so far. So that means he's talking up his rookie, preparing him to start. Which is, people were talking about this in the beginning of the year of, do you draft Trey Lance because he might not help you immediately, but when he starts, here we go, and we're here in week 17, championship week, and we might finally be able to see it.
He got 20 fantasy points in a half of football, and this was why I saw this coming. This is why I was 100% in on Trey Lance from the get-go, and it has not burnt me at all to this point. In some, he was that guy on in the leagues where I drafted him heavily, and I was kind of banking on him starting after the bye because Jimmy Garoppolo would be so bad. On those teams, I held him for the entire season, even though I should have dropped him a long time ago. But my teams were sunk with him anyway. I have a team that's live right now that if I somehow squeak by, I could start Trey Lance in place of Matt Ryan. So if I can squeak by tonight with this Waddle demon time, I don't know who Sean is, but shout out Sean. It is Waddle demon time.
That's who I'm going against this week. So Jalen Waddle's not going to do what he needs to do, but he's going to do what you need to do. Now, to quickly touch on that Garoppolo situation, Jimmy G is expected to be reevaluated on Wednesday. I personally, based on the tone being put out there in these reports, I'd be a little bit concerned. This is his right hand, which would be his throwing hand. It's his right thumb.
He couldn't throw the ball today. That's not good.
He also had a horrific week. So, listen, they're looking for a jolt. I think Jimmy G's still the right answer for them right now, but I mean, Trey Lance is right there. He's ready to go. And
yes.
He's going against Houston. It's a nice matchup.
Let it rip with Trey Lance. Let it rip.
This is the type of matchup that's going to shoot up his fantasy value for next year.
I know. It actually sucks. It
kind of does, where if you're not playing him this week, if he's not helping you.
Oh, my gosh. But if he flops this week, though, that actually is great if he flops this week. I will be all over it.
If he goes off, if he does what we expect him to do, his draft value shoots up 3 to 4 rounds.
Yeah, that's interesting. I still think he'll, even if because right now he probably would go close to undrafted if Jimmy G comes back. But anyway, Mike Evans, probably not going to see him this week either. I don't know. I got the feeling that week to week meant we don't need him for the regular season anymore. So we'll see in the playoffs. Mike, what do you got on Mike Evans?
I tend to lean towards the same thing. I'm keeping what happened today was, last week he suffered the hamstring injury. He was ruled out on Friday. They alluded to the fact that he might be able to play, but he was an early rule out, so it didn't really seem like he was close, didn't register a practice, and now he's been added to the COVID list. So between the Bucs perfectly handling the Panthers last week and then some, without Mike Evans, without Godwin, without anybody, I think they're going to try to do the same thing. I think they'll let Mike Evans take the week off. Because he's clearly not right between COVID.
Do they have any meaningful games?
Everyone's chasing that number 1 seed. That number 1 seed is still possible. Green Bay's in the driver's seat, but if Green Bay drops a game, Tampa could take over if they win out. And the number 1 seed, remember, there's no bye week for that number 2. So that number 1 is what really matters, and it's possible. It's unlikely that Rodgers drops a game, but it's still in the realm of outcomes, which is why teams are still going out there.
They have Jets next week. So, again, I don't imagine that they would view the Jets as a reason to risk Mike Evans aggravating that hamstring even further. So, Don't expect him next week. Case closed. Let's see. Julio Jones, he's just mailing it in. Good for him. David Johnson, I actually missed this. Was he on the COVID list as well?
he was out of the COVID list later on the weekend, which set up Rex Burkhead to have a 150-yard game, 2 touchdowns, just as we predicted, as the Texans routed the Chargers without Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, yeah. Like we all
I
predicted.
don't have a reason. I don't have an explanation for it. It happened.
Yeah, yeah. We
Yeah,
all
for sure.
we all have a plan until we get punched in the face. That's usually how these things work out. Josh Reynolds, Dan Arnold. Dan Arnold. Tell me about Dan Arnold on here. Is he coming back?
I throw Dan Arnold on there because the Jags do like to use their tight ends a little bit. You know, James O'Shaughnessy got some action. He's had some streamable weeks of late. Dan Arnold was playing really well when they traded for him back in like week 4, week 3. Then he got injured. He was recently activated to return to the injury reserve, hence why I threw him on this list, because now he's on the COVID list. So his status is now in doubt for this weekend, if he was even going to return at all. I'd put it down as unlikely, especially now with COVID, but
Yeah, yeah. I think if Josh Reynolds comes back, sure. I feel like you're not depending on him if you're in the playoff finals. Not
Josh
depending on.
he was on a tear with Jared Goff, and Jared Goff has been activated, hence why I also threw him on there, where I think Josh Reynolds can be played
Okay.
with Jared Goff, but also it's not someone you want to play, and we'll see if he's even active due to him also contracting.
Yeah. I mean, the Lions are playing tough, so I guess I just need to stop thinking that they're so bad. Nick Westbrook, Akine, also someone to keep an eye on. He might be able to good fill in, especially if Julio Jones is out. Got plenty of targets. My goodness, AJ Brown is a monster. We'll talk about him more in a second. We're running short on time. Gabe Davis is probably going to be out again. Same boat as Mike Williams, not vaccinated, so therefore the protocol takes a little bit longer. So we'll see on him. Isaiah McKenzie, they love getting him the ball, and I think the reason they don't is because he's so tiny. Yeah. I actually did play for how bad the leaving Mike Williams play was in that same lineup. I played Isaiah McKenzie, which that's big brain stuff there, Mike.
So good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so keep an eye on what are we doing? Okay, Lamar Jackson is hopeful to play in a matchup that they basically have to win or their season's over. DeAndre Swift, I think, got really close to playing this week, but ultimately was ruled out day of when they woke up and he was still a little bit sore. DeAndre Swift, when asked, this is great as someone who has a lot of Swift, when asked if he would sit out the rest of the season since they were out of it, I quote, DeAndre Swift responded, "I ain't about that shit." So we're probably going to see him this week because time's running out in the season for a team that's not going to make the playoffs. I think both of them play them if they're active, play them in your finals.
With Lamar Jackson, I think it comes down to what other options you have that could be better. I think we saw Lamar Jackson have a lower floor than what we were hoping for. He's had some down weeks even when he was healthy. I do expect both these players to come back. I think Lamar Jackson, I think the Ravens need him. I think he needs them. He wants to make the playoffs. Lamar Jackson needs to be out there. And I think you can play him, but my expectations would be tempered if he's still limited. And also he's had his own down weeks. So we'll see about, what other options I'd have. I'm sure we'll talk about it on Sunday on the Sunday show. But more importantly, DeAndre Swift. If DeAndre Swift is active, I'm playing DeAndre Swift. He goes against Seattle. Seattle's a plus matchup, and then some. It's a great matchup where we saw, Dave Montgomery rack up 7 receptions against them. DeAndre Swift can do that. And when running backs return from injury, they tend to get the workload that we want them to get because they're right. You don't return with running backs unless they are right because it's too injury risk of a position. We've seen so many running backs this season miss time, come back, and get the workload we just immediately step right back into.
Yeah, and while we're on that case, let's jump into just like a little bit of like looking forward on specifically kind of thinking about some stuff about dynasty value. If we had maybe next year when we do this, we will do some things with segments and actually name them. But let's take a look at let's do 3 conversations here if we have time on some dynasty values. I'm going to bring up Amon-Ra St. Brown because I'm getting this like huge sentiment boost from the community, fantasy community about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm still not sold because I think a lot of the reason why he's balling out right now is because he's the last man standing. Josh Reynolds out, TJ Hawkinson out, DeAndre Swift out. They're playing well. The ball has to go somewhere. I think if you're buying Amon-Ra St. Brown at his current cost and expecting him to sustain this level of production into the next season, I think you will be pretty disappointed.
I was a noted Amon-Ra truther. I do like Amon-Ra. I like my USC receivers, and he's a tough player. He's a good blocker. He's a good slot guy. He's good at what he does. Now, that's kind of it's a limited ceiling typically. Now he's been balling out this 20 points more than once this season on the Lions. But you're entirely right that it does coincide with the loss of TJ Hawkinson, the loss of DeAndre Swift. And this offense is going to be adding more playmakers, more wide receivers specifically, because it's awful. It's unwatchable. A casual player, a casual person, casual fan of even the Lions cannot name some of these receivers. So Khalif Raymond, Josh Reynolds, who was added a couple weeks ago, it's not that good out there. And I think I had Amon-Ra as my wide receiver 5 or 6 in this class. I had him ahead of Kadarius Toney. I do think that he's a good player, and I think he's going to have a strong career. I think he should have been a day 2 pick. I don't read into the day 3 as much with this weird draft class with COVID, but I do agree that his value is very high right now. I would look into selling him. I wouldn't be buying him due to the price, but I do think he's still going to be a strong asset in 2022 and beyond.
I think it's a screaming sell. Like one of the easiest sells ever. If you can get a 2nd round pick for him.
No. You spent a 2nd on him, to be honest. I think you can get I think the market right now is a 1st round pick. I think you could get a back end 1st round pick from him in this class. I would consider doing that. I think that
I would do that. I would take like 10 overall in a 12-team league. Like I would definitely do that. I think I would rather probably that type of trade. Like I would probably trade him for maybe like a 26 or 27-year-old wide receiver that people think is over the hill, who might not be. I don't know, like off the top of my head, who that would even be.
Let's say now, would you trade him for Mike Williams?
Yeah, I would.
Okay, so I think that's on the price, because I think that's what you'd have to pay, given how up and down Mike Williams has been, given his contract situation. I think that's the price value right now.
That's a solid, yeah. My big thing with Amon-Ra St. Brown is that he's a day 3 pick. Draft capital is such a heavy indicator as future success. Like there aren't many day 3 picks that pan out. Like flash in the pan, sure, big games here and there, of course, but nothing like Mike Williams, who, like, I know he's up and down, but he has had stretches where he has won you weeks, right? I don't know that Amon-Ra St. Brown has stretches beyond a week or two, really beyond this season. But it's a I also, you mentioned Kadarius Toney. I would take Kadarius Toney over Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I would have. I mean, I drafted Amon-Ra over Kadarius Toney, and
so I still think that, like, right now, if that looks great right now, but I think Kadarius Toney, like, in the long term, like, is a first round pick, and I think that if I could make an Amon-Ra St. Brown for Kadarius Toney trade right now, I'm doing that 1,000%, which I think is interesting, because I'm pretty sure that's an easy trade to make right now.
And then I'm sure you could get more with it as well, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't really have St. Brown anywhere, but I might try to get him just to make this trade and make a point. Another thing I wanted to talk about is who do you want at cost? This is a very important distinction.
Yes.
Ja'Marr Chase at probably number 2 wide receiver overall value in Dynasty, probably top 10 overall value in non-superflex leagues. I'd probably put him in the top 7.
Call him a first-round startup pick.
The Dynasty community as a whole loves Ja'Marr Chase.
Yep.
Right?
As do I.
And with good reason. He's a touchdown scoring machine, awesome draft capital, amazing college stats. Like, he is, like, literally the Uber prospect for Dynasty. However, I feel like T. Higgins, even after a 43-point PPR performance, and multiple weeks of being on the field with Ja'Marr Chase and dominating the target share. Not like it's not close. He is the number one in terms of target share.
Yep.
I think that you're getting a 2+ round discount on him. Give me T. Higgins over Ja'Marr Chase at that cost all day. All day. What about you? Who do you want?
Yeah. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm going to agree. I said entering this year, and I was obviously wrong, at least for the first half of the year, that I thought T. Higgins was the number one on this team. And over time, that's proven to be the case. And that's no disrespect to Ja'Marr Chase, who could easily be that. And I think it's a 1A, 1B situation, which both can thrive in a very pass-happy offense. Zac Taylor, as we saw this weekend with the Ravens.
All of a sudden, it's pass-happy. I think that was mostly like – I actually was listening to the Philly sports radio before, and they cut to the press conference of Joe Burrow after. Marty Mortonweg said, "We're not going to give Joe Burrow a jacket just yet."
Yep. I saw that.
And Burrow was like, "Yeah, that's why we were throwing the ball up 20 points in the first quarter. They're throwing bombs still." So that is kind of that's what skyrocketed this into a point. A 1% outcome, ceiling outcome for the team as a whole. But the peripherals, the target share for the last 4 weeks, a little bit bigger of a sample. If you want to call it a 1A, 1B, it's 1A T. Higgins, 1B Ja'Marr Chase.
Yep. And you're getting the 1A at the third, fourth round price, probably third round price after this.
However, here is why I can totally see the pushback on that statement from the run the damn ball guys, the hand in the dirt guys, the tape guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason why Ja'Marr Chase is currently in a 1B role from a numbers perspective, right, is because they're doubling him. So the defensive scheme is dictating kind of where the ball is funneling to, and teams are seeing that they're getting absolutely punished by allowing that to happen. And if you're a tape guy and you say that that's why Ja'Marr Chase is the 1A, is because defenses view him as the 1A. Not so fast, my friend, because also in that press conference leading up to the statement about the Hall of Fame jacket, what's his name, Marty Mortonweg, the defensive coordinator for the Ravens, also just said we're not doubling Ja'Marr Chase.
Yeah.
So
I don't think
in a game,
personnel. I think that Ravens team is a bit beat up right now, and I really do. I have to factor in. Listen, Ja'Marr Chase is going to be one of my most aggressive buys if I can this offseason. Where if I can buy anyone who's I know several owners who have traded for him after that hot stretch, and they have been crushed by this second half. So I'm going to try my best to buy right off of that narrative. But listen, Ja'Marr Chase has a sky-high ceiling that's higher than T. Higgins. I understand spending that price for him. And
does Ja'Marr Chase have 43 points?
No.
He may go his whole career without ever scoring 43 points.
He could. He absolutely could. But you know who else just dropped 30 points? Rex Burkhead. Sometimes outlier weeks, or not even outlier weeks, but amazing weeks can happen. And T. Higgins is fantastic. He's got a bright career ahead of him too. But Ja'Marr Chase could be Julio Jones. T. Higgins could be, I don't know, he's not going to be Julio Jones. He's going to be very good. He's going to be elite, possibly. But he won't.
Julio Jones has one game in his entire career of 43 points.
Well, you have that stat on hand of the 43 points with Julio Jones. But listen, I'm with you. I'm taking T. Higgins in that third round discount. But Ja'Marr Chase does have a higher ceiling to me on a per game basis. I don't think T. Higgins can be the wide receiver one. I don't.
I mean,
am I the Ja'Marr Chase guy of the two of us now?
No, I love both. Okay, this is an interesting one. Let's just real quickly, let's talk AJ Brown, who I think all three of these, T. Higgins, Ja'Marr Chase, and AJ Brown, I have in my top, let's say 7, because I'm not drafting any running backs. My rankings are different because I'm in a dynasty startup in a redraft league. You will not catch me drafting a running back in the first round. I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry. But so in my top, let's say 5, I'm not putting T. Higgins in the top 5 just because I don't.
I was going to say. And why aren't you? Ceiling? Upside?
It's more draft capital, honestly. He doesn't quite have the draft capital.
The 33rd overall?
Yeah, I mean that's meaningful though that 32 teams passed on him though. So that is meaningful. So again, that's why I'm not putting him up there. I do think it's interesting though that the gap between them is too big. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's way too big. They should
Yeah.
go like Jamar Chase should go like front end of the first. T Higgins should go early second, mid second. Honestly, I just think they're both that good and they complement each other so well. And I guess people just really struggle to understand that like most years has at least one team with two top 12 fantasy wide receivers. It's just like when teams can't double one person, like both benefit. It's like a correlated thing. But so well, I'll ask you like because the two that are definitely in the top 5 for me are Jamar Chase and AJ Brown. From a draft capital perspective, just a pure raw numbers perspective, I mean, we saw it this week with AJ Brown. He can just completely take over a game. Who are you taking in a dynasty startup, AJ Brown or Jamar Chase?
I would take Jamar Chase just because I love AJ Brown. I think he's one of the best wide receivers in football right now. That's why we're talking about him in the same vein as these guys. But his ability to stay on the field is really being questioned by me. It's nagging injuries where he's leaving. He might be back next week. And then, like, we look at it as, yeah, he played 14 games last year, but how many of those did he leave or we thought was never going to return? And, I mean, this year, he missed several stretches of games, and he's put up duds of weeks sometimes where these dominating games, they're not a constant, which it's tough to be, especially in a run-first offense. But, I mean, I'm going to take Jamar Chase because, again, he was my wide receiver 1 of the class by a margin. He would be my highest graded wide receiver prospect I've ever scouted as a young person myself, though. But I think that I'm still going to take a guy that was the wide receiver 1 over the first half of the season.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, he's a rookie, so he's doing this his rookie year. That's something that we need to understand. I think for me, it's probably Justin Jefferson 1, Jamar Chase 2. And here's where like people start to differ a whole lot. Probably going AJ Brown 3. But I wouldn't blame you if you went. I mean, there's a lot of good young wide receivers.
I might consider Tyreek Hill there. I might consider CeeDee Lamb there. I think CeeDee Lamb has a real case for that. I put out an interesting tweet on that today. I don't know if you saw that, but CeeDee Lamb's numbers right now are near identical to what he had last year.
Yeah. But that's with Dak. That's actually a bad thing.
It is a bad thing. But I'm saying that's where his ceiling is still yet to be seen. His ceiling is so much higher than what we're even
And he's had opportunities with Amari Cooper out, with Michael Gallup out.
Yeah.
Like with the running backs like banged up, like for some reason he doesn't seem to be like taking over. So I've actually moved him down pretty far. I'm probably not thinking of him as like in the same tier as Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, and
I think you have a lot of contract situations where I'd be looking at CeeDee Lamb a bit more, where Michael Gallup's entering unrestricted free agency, where Amari Cooper's contract is going to start becoming a little bit more trade friendly or cut or restart.
I think they can get out of Amari Cooper very easily next year. Yes, I know that for a fact.
Will most likely walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so definitely jury's still out on him. We talked about we might do some off-season stuff with Dynasty. I definitely would fire it up and do some Dynasty content this offseason. But yeah, let's move on because we got the game coming up.
Yeah.
Let's do a little rant. Tell me a little bit about Jalen Waddle.
Do I have to talk about Jalen Waddle? Because I mean,
okay. So who are you pulling for? What's this?
This game is not what it was billed to be before the season, because we got Ian Book and the COVID-ridden Saints lining up against the Dolphins here. Hard to believe both of these teams are 7-7, but inverse of each other, where the Saints were 5-0 to start the year with Jameis Winston, and now they're on to their 4th QB and they're 7-7. The Dolphins have won, I believe, 6 straight here. They're still in contention for the playoffs. They're trying to make it in there. So it's an important game. You have Tua. I right now in my captain slot, I do have an interesting play. I have the Miami Dolphins defense because I think Ian Book is about to get ridiculously embarrassed on prime time. I think this is going to be as bad as it could possibly get for the Saints. I think we have a 0-point possibility here. It's unlikely because shutouts never really happen. But I don't think the Saints are going to move the ball. I'd be worried about Kamara right now because this Dolphins team is on fire. This Saints team has been smacked in the mouth this week, and I'm captaining the Miami Dolphins defense. I'm lining up Tua, I'm lining up Waddle, and I'm lining up Duke Johnson to run out the clock. I think this could be a weird solve in a midweek, but I mean, the Miami backfield is impossible to predict right now. So I'm playing one Saint, that's Alvin Kamara, and I'm playing most Dolphins, honestly. I do think Marshawn Lattimore shadows Devontae Parker and not Jalen Waddle, but either way, I don't think the Saints really have too much of a leg to stand on here.
Yeah, it's going to be so Nick Underhill is like a really good beat writer for them, and it's pretty plugged into the team. I think the sentiment in New Orleans, like the team in general, is that why did they postpone this game? Like, this is bullshit. So I don't know, like, even like some of Ian Book's quotes have been like, yeah, like I'm maybe not really qualified to do this job right now, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, calling up Rivers and Breeze, not a great sign for your football team.
No.
When you're calling those guys,
it's a good sign that we're hearing about it, that we know that's happening. It's right now, this team is in shambles, and which is unlike the New Orleans Saints that we know of years past.
Yeah, definitely. So, putting a defense in your captain slot is sharp. So I'm with you there. So let's go Miami defense. Close it out here for the last time. Not the last you'll see of the two of us, I'm sure. It's been a pleasure, Mike. I don't know if people know this, but this is just random. Like, we met through For Fantasy Sake, and it's been great kind of getting some reps in the podcast game. This is the first time I've ever done it, and I'm excited and happy I was able to do it with you. Good luck on everybody, especially Mike here on those fantasy championships. Bring them home, finish it out strong, and then we'll rinse and repeat next year. How about you send us out, Mike?
No, I echo everything you just said. As a college kid, all these opportunities are greatly appreciated. And, you know, we were thrown together on a podcast saying, let's just do this back in September, back in August, whatever it was. And it's hard to believe that we're, 16 weeks down, and we're here in the fantasy finals. So, I wish everyone the best of luck with their matchups tonight, if that decides it, or next week, should you have your championship. And I hope we helped you guys get there. So, I'll take it out here. This was presented by the Mobile Party Experience, someone we've been lucky enough to have them sponsor us all year long. Definitely check them out for all your tailgating experiences in the Quad Cities. I'm Mike. You can find me at Michael__Sicoli. That's 2 underscores on Twitter. Find Nick Roll here on run_the_Sims. I got it right for the first time this year, and it better be because it's the last one. So good luck tonight. Enjoy Monday Night Football. Good luck in your matchups. Thank you for.
Peace, everybody.